Okay, so we might want to wait a few minutes. Okay, that's fine. All right. Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this cabinet meeting on today's date, the 15th of April. Just to inform you of change in the agenda order, we will be bringing item 11 concerning the Rocket House forward to earlier on in the agenda, but we are waiting for officer attendance, so they were just being informed that we were to do that. So some flexibility there. But the first item is to receive apologies for absence, and Councillor Lucy Shires is still on leave. So I don't believe there are any other apologies for absence. We don't have any public questions. Sorry, I skipped over the minutes. To approve the minutes of the meeting held the 11th of March. Were there any questions on the minutes, please? No, okay. I'm happy to propose that they are accepted. Do I have a second? No. Seconded by Councillor Ringer. And everyone in favour, presumably? Yes, okay, thank you. So we have no questions and statements. We have any declarations of interest on items on the agenda? No, no items of urgent business. And in terms of item 6, were there any questions at this stage from members? Members not on the committee? No. Okay. Are we still expecting? Yes. Are we expecting Andy Woodley? Or is it Renata that's happy to cover item 11? Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. So if we deal with item 11 now, then, so the Rocket House. So this is a paper really to undertake a confirmatory vote. Our capital budget is, of course, already approved. The issues have been given significant attention, subject to quite a lot of conversation locally, of course, and we've recently undertaken a programme of survey works on the property, which included the extraction of core samples to identify the cause or causes of damp, with other defects to the building, with deteriorated assets already known or already identified. We must also improve the energy efficiency of the building to save costs and in future meet net zero goals. It's possible to carry out this project over a period of about 32 weeks with a fair wind and within budget. And discussions have already begun with the RNLI over future heads of terms. But it was important to bring this paper here today to confirm our course of action. And what we would be doing in the near future is issuing a joint press release with the RNLI with following these discussions, really, in terms of the heads of terms. So that's the course of action. Renata, is there anything you wanted to sort of add or speak further to the item? Thank you.
Thank you. So if approved, we would undertake a 32-week programme to remediate the damp and deal with energy improvement works, and that would likely to start early autumn. The cost of that would be in the region of £828,000, plus additional costs for the energy improvement works, and a budget was set previously, capital budget of £1 million. So the intention would be to work within that already allocated budget. Thank you.
So And welcome to our visitors this morning. Thank you for coming to join us. It is a dreary day, so appreciate everyone's attendance, frankly, because the weather has changed quite significantly from the lovely weekend we've had. But there we are. I appreciate your personal interests and dedication to the heritage of Cromer and what you've achieved there over the years. So appreciate you having you here today. So I've got an incredible tickle in my throat at the moment, so I'm trying to persevere. Sorry about that. Were there any questions from members on the paper? No? Okay, Councillor Cushing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, the paper. So okay, right. I have to say what surprises me a bit about this paper is the lack of detail that we have here. We're looking in district terms, this is a large spend of money, £1 million thereabouts. If we look at the inclusive of VAT, I'm not sure whether that includes repairing the lift as well, which I understand is a major issue around there. And I thought if you're going to spend £1 million, then we ought to have a good detailed case justification for doing that. When this was brought to the September meeting, all the papers, which goes into considerable detail, were in what is known as purple papers for the benefit of our guests. That means it's confidential papers which are not open to the public. And I thought at that time that a number of options were going to be assessed in terms of doing that. You mentioned the RNLI, and I think that's a pivotal point. I think all of us, I'm sure everyone in Cromer, and indeed I think in the district, are keen to make sure that the RNLI retain its museum in Cromer. You mentioned heads of terms, but do we actually have any guarantee that if the repairs are undertaken, that the RNLI will obviously take out a new lease, given that they've already tendered notice on their current one as well? And also, I mean, if we were spending £1 million on it, what guarantees would we have that would make the building, how would that resist any future storm surges? I understand we've already had, I think according to you, 2 storm surges in the past, which have run through the building, and that's very hard to do. So there's a concern is if the RNLI do not take the building, then we've suddenly got a building which may be rather difficult to actually let to somebody else as well. So what guarantees do you think we would have around that? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cushing. So it's first of all not just about the RNLI. We've obviously got a very successful tenant upstairs. It's a destination in its own right. A very good employer for the town. You've observed yourself. It's even on a fairly dreary day. It's very, very, very busy, very vibrant business, really, in that sense, and it has been for some time. We've of course already, approved the capital budget. We've, undertaken a lot of consideration about different options. But in terms of, your last question about guarantees, surges are going to be a risk to all of our coastal assets in the future, of course. That said, we are investing in coastal defences. However, if we see a major surge, it's possible, we could see damage at the location, of course, in future. But in terms of the damp, which is the significant issue, the damp that's tracking in through the rear of the building, we would expect to see a lengthy guarantee that these works would be able to prevent that happening. So that's fundamentally what we're trying to achieve with the works, alongside the net zero, the energy efficiency improvements. In terms of the lift and all other works, so there's an opportunity here as well to update the public toilet provision, and that's the other important point. It's also a public toilet there. There's the important access with the lift between the cliff top and the promenade, so it does contribute towards the vitality of our other responsibilities and assets. I'm thinking of, obviously, the most obvious example is the pier, but other concessions on the promenade. So, it's an important building operationally. And yes, it's a shame. Obviously, we're in the position we are in terms of the defects that have emerged, but realistically, we are where we are. So we've got to try and resolve it. Was there any further questions?
I mean, it comes back to the point though around the business case. Obviously, there are a list of buildings in North Norfolk. If you're going to prioritise spending £1 million, and we have obviously 9 Norris Street in Fakenham, there are many others around there. So I just think to prove to residents there is nothing in the public domain in terms of that anyone can look at actually to make the points that you've just made in your paper. And I think actually it would be helpful to have a business case detailed down here that explains all that, because we've only got 7 pages in the report. You make valid points about the RLI, but I do think that would have, is one that could have been. So I don't actually looking at the paper that we had in September, all that was in private papers. A lot of that I can't see actually why we needed to put that in there. If that had been in the public realm, then that would have probably helped. I think and people understand better the decision being made here today.
Okay, well, obviously 9 Norris Street in Fakenham is not an asset that we own, so we're not able to sort of commit a capital budget to it in the sense that we are here to resolve an issue that is in our control. Certainly, it's our wish to resolve those issues, but certainly a separate issue from the discussion today. Obviously, in terms of the other options at the building, they might have included disposal, demolition. It might have even included relocation of the museum, but we're still left with the damp issue if we were to move, if the museum were to locate elsewhere. And that might not be our responsibility per se, but if we were to try and re-let the building, we would still have to deal with those issues. So given the impacts of losing the building operationally, you lose that access, you lose the public toilets, you potentially impact on the viability of your other assets. That's the sort of conversation we've had over a period of time. So certainly not a position we wanted to be in at all in terms of the impacts the damp has been having on the building, but it's something we've had to resolve. So that said, really pleased with the work our estates team have been doing here. It's quite complex, and they've worked hard to try and identify the causes, and I think again they've proven the immense value to this council and all that they achieve with many big strategic challenges. So very grateful to the team. I think in terms of the future, this project's obviously going to require monitoring quite closely. Happy obviously to, I suppose, invite members to another visit. We obviously undertook that previously, and I think that was useful. That was informative. Obviously, we had an individual visit together, and that's entirely acceptable. I think there are other big projects, of course, going on. The Mundsey and Cromer coastal defence schemes. We've got the Fakenham Leisure Centre. Hopefully, as long as the money is approved, I'm sure it will be. So I think that opportunity for members is always present to monitor these projects quite closely. There were a couple of other hands. I saw Liz and then Angie and Nigel. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, sure.
Thank you. I just wanted to reiterate that what you said about the estates team actually, and the briefing that we went to with Andy Woodley was excellent and gave a lot of detailed information that has helped us to make these decisions that we couldn't otherwise have done. So, I'd like to flag that up as how important that has been as part of this process. Thank you.
Yeah, certainly has. Angie, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, everybody. I have to confess to having some sympathy with you over this issue. The previous Lib Dem administration, by that I mean that of 2003 to 2011, have left you in an impossible situation by supporting and promoting the construction of this unfortunate building. This should never have happened. I recall the initial planning site visit. Both myself and Councillor Willis, the then member for Mundsley, both of us being only too aware of the hazards of groundwater in our cliffs, we were against it. Subsequently, I have discovered that our nationally respected coastal engineers were not consulted at the time. The then coxswain of the Cromer lifeboat and hero, Richard Davis, who was actually awarded by the RNLI bronze medal and a double vellum, he warned against it. The dangers from the tidal surges. I say no more. I can recall 2007 and 2013. Whilst I hesitate to use the phrase, "we told you so," you are now left in the unenviable position of having to support a project that you know to be a monumental mistake. If you do away with the Lifeboat Museum, you destroy with one stroke why Cromer is so respected nationally. Perhaps you will tell us the result of your recent visit with the RNLI when I have finished what I have to say. You will prevent the disabled from accessing the promenade immediately, independently. You will lose many visitors' enjoyment of the spectacular views and other facilities. You are between a rock and a hard place, and I doubt you are brave enough to stop investing in this foolhardy scheme. What was originally a fairly modest cafe, sitting well away from the cliffs and in an elevated position, has turned into a millstone around your necks. I hope you Lib Dem members are proud.
Okay, actually, I'm not sure whether your point was you wanted us to do this or not, because you seem to make both points. But let's try and keep the politics out of this, to be honest, because I don't think it's going to be helpful. I can't take responsibility for something that began to be considered, I think, when I was 11 years old. So I'm not going to discuss that too much. I think I was 13 or 14 when the building was completed, so quite a long time ago for me. I appreciate the concerns over the location of the building. It seems a logical concern to me. That said, the design was supposed to counter those issues. Obviously, there'd been some concerns locally about cliff slips and all that sort of thing, and that isn't what's happening here. It's actually a relatively simple problem, but it's very hard to resolve, sadly. But in terms of the other point you mentioned about access, about the lovely environment where the building is situated, obviously that's something we are trying to preserve. So confident we can get these issues sorted out, confident that the museum has a long future ahead of it in the town, and we will be as I say, issuing a joint release with the RNLI at such time when we've dealt with the matter of the temporary heads of terms for the continued use of the building. Councillor Dixon, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to pick up on a couple of points that have been made already, I agree with Councillor Fitch-Tillett. You are in a difficult position. It's an unenviable position, and it's one which deserves a great deal of consideration and should be evidence-based. And to pick up on your point, it should be aside from and devoid of politics, party politics. So the points that I want to make are very much around the search for evidence that supports the decision that you propose to make. I go back to September of last year, and my recollection of that cabinet meeting and the paper we considered, there were a range of options that were considered in that paper.
Mhm.
And there was a very clear expectation that those options would be explored. So my first significant point is, where is the options appraisal? So I would like to see, and I think every member of this council would want to see, before we spend the best part of £1 million, where is the options appraisal that points us in the direction of this particular option that you have chosen. The next point that I would make is that where is the business case to support the decision? So what sort of information might we expect to see in that business case? Well, we've got a history on this building, and often history is a very good indication of what you might expect in the future. Not always, but that's a good indication. So how much has the building cost us since it was constructed? What are the revenue costs that we've incurred each year? There's a fair bit of information there that would support the financial viability, or would inform, if you like, the financial viability of the business case. So the other part of that is, there's no indication here I would expect in a business case to see what is the future viability of this decision.
Okay.
Particularly, we are in a context of this council of having to close a revenue budget gap. Revenue is where our pressure is. We have to either come up with income streams, or we have to come up with ways of saving money or doing things more efficiently. That's a very considerable consideration in this decision. So that business case would be, I think, if it had that information, would be evidence-based. I don't know what that decision would be, because we haven't got that evidence here.
Okay. Well, yes. Thank you.
So if I might just trot through the rest of the points.
Okay. Yes. Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So the other recollection I have about the September Cabinet report is that it was suggested that reinstatement of the building would not be economically viable without external funding. My understanding of this is you haven't got external funding. It comes from us. It comes from our ratepayers, effectively. So I really think that we have to kind of go back to those points in the past in order to assure ourselves that the process that we've followed is a valid one, and one which is credible. Because within these 7 pages, and I commend you on the brevity of the paper, I have to say, but on the content of it, in terms of the relevance of supporting the decision, it's woefully inadequate in my view. And I suppose penultimate point that I would make is that, coming back to this rock and a hard place, very often we have to pinch our nose and swallow hard and take decisions which, quite frankly, are very unpalatable at times. And this is one which I think might fall into that category. And there is a parallel here. Sometimes we have to make what we call stop-loss decisions, because it's the equivalent of throwing good money after bad sometimes. And clearly it's a bad idea to do that. So they are the substantial points. My last point, Mr. Chairman, is one for you to reflect on personally, because you are a councillor for Cromer Town. This is a very substantial facility here in Cromer, and I haven't heard you declare an interest. Now, I wouldn't expect you to declare a pecuniary interest in this.
I don't have an interest in this. Yeah,
I'm-
okay, so let's
Just hear me through.
You said you were going to trot through. I think
Yes.
you need to trot a bit faster so we can get to the answering of these points. That's okay.
Do you want to hear this or not?
I don't have an interest in the building. I don't work there. I'm not part of the RNLI. It's not even in my ward, I should say. It's in the neighbouring ward. So
I'm only asking
wind up.
you,
Yeah.
I'm only asking you, I'm not asking you to respond to this particularly, but I'm asking you to reflect on whether or not a member of the public or any other resident of North Norfolk might view your position as a ward member, because I can tell you that if I were in your position, I would consider that I had an interest, because if this was in Houghton, I would be saying that I have an interest as a local member. And I would be making that open. I wouldn't expect more than that, but I would expect a declaration of interest. And if you look at the Nolan principles, there is one of being open
Can we get
and
to
there
the
is one
point?
of being selfless.
Can we get to the point, please?
So I would just ask you to reflect on whether that's a relevant issue for you. I don't know whether you've discussed it with the monitoring officer or what. It doesn't matter to me, really. And I don't believe that you have a personal, if you like, or a pecuniary interest,
Okay,
but there is a broad.
Can we wind this up now? Is that okay?
So I'll hold
Yeah.
my point. I'll close my points at that. Whether you want to respond to any of the.
I will
earlier
respond to
points,
all of that, Councillor Dixon.
I'll leave
Thank
to
you.
you.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I do not have any interest in the building. I do not work there, not part of the RNLI. Certainly, I think we all support the work they do, both in terms of the life-saving operations and also heritage preservation. So certainly don't need to declare an interest. In terms of, yes, it is in the neighbouring ward to the one I represent. It's within my county council division, of course, and it's within the ward I live. In terms of where we are and the investment that we've got to make to secure this building, I didn't want to be in this position. I didn't set out to have to deal with the issues we had here. In fact, I wasn't aware of the extent of the problems before I took on my current role as leader of this council. So I appreciate it's been going on for some time, but it's not something that I had been briefed on. That said, we were all aware that it had some damp issues and problems. So not something when we set out really as a council, it wasn't one of our primary roles, primary expectations, I should say, to try and deal with this. We've obviously got responsibilities across the district. You're aware of conversations we're having currently about a particular property in your own ward. These are all things we want to achieve. So it's certainly don't want to have any primary focus on the town of Cromer, which is I think the point you are getting at. In terms of the capital versus the revenue budget, this is obviously a capital expenditure, and the building was funded via an EU and Eastern Shires grant in the early 2000s, of course. We've received a service charge income from the RNLI and a service charge and a rent from the tenants upstairs. Until relatively recently, the building has been sustainable in the sense that it hasn't caused us lots of problems in terms of maintenance obligations. As time has moved on, certain assets within the building have aged. We've talked about the doors previously. One of the issues we'll resolve is the heating system in the building. That's obviously going to happen. What's less excusable, obviously, is the damp issue to the building. And as I say, it's a simple issue, just very difficult to resolve. But as I say, it links so closely to the viability of other assets along the promenade area, ones which we are responsible for and ones which we actually derive an income from. The pier, as you now know, is making some money again. We've got other concessions in the area, and unrelated to ourselves, we've got businesses on the promenade which depend, I suppose, on that package of viability. So it is important to the future of that area and its continued economic prosperity. In terms of being between a rock and a hard place, it's an interesting, actually, it's more of a sort of rock and a sort of soft wet cliff, really. But the rock is certainly quite an interesting point, because when we did the drill sampling, I know certain number of drills pieces were actually broken. The building is certainly not going anywhere. It's structurally incredibly tough. It's certainly not going to float off anywhere anytime soon. It's very, very tough concrete. And that should give you some comfort that actually, the investment here is sustainable for a long period of time and will contribute towards various goals. In terms of how we've gone about our considerations, as I say, we have considered other options in terms of demolition, closure. Also, in terms of the relocation, there was considerations about using other assets to accommodate the museum elsewhere locally. That wasn't felt sustainable, and it wouldn't be something that we could invest in. It would have to have been outside funding, which you also mentioned. So quite complex considerations, but the impacts of not securing the future of the building are quite considerable, which I hope we've been able to demonstrate. As I said, we have already agreed to the capital budget for this project, and it should hopefully, as I said, with a fair wind, come in time and under budget. That said, there's a lot to do. There's a lot of considerations. There's a lot of potential unexpected issues that could occur, but I'm fairly confident we can do that quickly. Yeah.
Indeed, it will be quick. So I'm going to just simply ask you, where is that options appraisal? Where is that business case? And my last point is, yes, you've separated out, this is a capital investment in the building now, but it has revenue implications.
Yes.
That's the point that I was trying to make.
Yeah. I feel I tried to cover that in terms of the revenue implications and the impact, both on the rent we get from the building. What I should also say, what I could add to that, is there is an opportunity, of course, to review the rents of the tenants of the building itself.
In the business case.
Yes.
Where is that business?
So we've obviously covered most of this in many previous reports, which have been available. So I as I say, we've covered all of the other options previously. We brought this back for transparency. Well, you want to see them all again? Do you want to switch your microphone on? Do you want to switch your microphone on?
Yes, the whole point of doing an options appraisal is you identify what the options were, but they needed to be appraised. There should be an options appraisal report that should support this. There should be a business case which supports this. Where are they?
Okay, so we've had many of these discussions previously. I bring Councillor Vickers in, and then we're going to move on, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just very briefly, I've listened to what the three councillors say, and I have to say I think that the Norfolk District public need to have more information about this. I think they need to see the options and how you've appraised them, and and a business case that supports the option that you've chosen. And all we need is a short paper drawing all these reports you've mentioned together, because it is a very big expenditure, and it's actually taxpayers' money, not our money, really, when push comes to shove. Thank you.
Okay, I think we've all spoken now in terms of.
Councillor, if I may, I mean, you're about to make a big decision here to spend £1 million worth of taxpayers' money. I want to make one very, very brief point. You said, I mean, following up what Councillor Dixon has just said, you said we've had these reports. The only reports we've had in the past are here in front of me in these purple papers, which are not available to the people behind you or any of our residents to do that. None of this is in the public realm as far as I'm aware. Now, that's the point we're making. You make a big decision, anything like this is perfectly reasonable for us to ask for a business case and an options paper, which justifies that expenditure.
Okay, well, I'm sorry to say, you have seen the different options we've considered.
My residents don't
And
have access to that.
in terms of, the options appraisal, that would always be in purple papers. That would be the case. We've also offered all members the opportunity to attend a briefing on the building and site visits. Not everyone attended, but that's individual responsibilities as members. So whilst we can re-provide a lot of that information, it has been present already. So I've described the impact of not doing the work in terms of where we would be, not just with this asset, but with co-located assets. And yes, we're not in an ideal position. We don't want to be in this position, but it really is the most logical way forward. Okay. Was there anything else anyone wanted to add? Okay. Right. So the recommendations are set out in the paper to delegate to the asset strategy manager, and with the existing capital budget to action the remedial works as outlined, and delegate to the asset manager to utilise remaining budget to improve the energy performance of the building. And something we haven't covered so much in the discussion is commence negotiation for terms of reference for a new lease. And just to reiterate, we will be seeking to issue a release alongside the RNLI in due course. So I propose the recommendations. And are they seconded, please? Seconded by Councillor Ringer, and all of those in favour. Okay, many thanks. Thank you for everyone's time in coming to see us. And we will move back to item 7, which is recommendations from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Councillor Dixon, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There were no recommendations for Cabinet to consider from that meeting.
So is that the case? I think you might have forgotten, you did have a recommendation. There's one in the agenda. There's one in the agenda. So your recommendation from the meeting was that all reports to the councils, yeah. Okay.
I thought that was council action, but I thought that was still council.
Okay.
But if you want to take it as a recommendation to cabinet, that's absolutely fine. But my recollection of that, but I may be in error. So.
Oh. So you did say to the council, the full council, that there were no recommendations. What I would say, I think, for the availability of for the whole council's information, I think recommendations to cabinet should probably be reported at full council as well. So we hadn't seen this before it appeared on the agenda. I've got Councillor Boyle, and then I'll come to you, Councillor Varley. Go ahead.
Just to say, it was a recommendation that we did make towards the end, at the very end of our overview and scrutiny meeting, last overview and scrutiny meeting, if that's helpful.
Yes, yeah. Councillor Varley, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, just to reiterate, it was indeed a recommendation issued at the end of the overview and scrutiny meeting. And just for full disclosure, this recommendation is actually something we're already doing as a council. So in regards of reports, there's already a segment on the impact of climate change and net zero. And actually, just to note, as I have the opportunity now, we are indeed improving that section, undertaking thorough notes from the peer review challenge of incorporating internal carbon pricing and carbon decision wheels. So we were improving that section, but as it's on the agenda, as it is indeed a recommendation from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, we may as well accept it.
Yes, of course. Yeah, as I say, we are doing a lot of this work already in terms of the net zero element to reports that come to the council, but that will be enhanced as you've heard. So, okay, thank you for that. So item 8 is the housing strategy, and sorry, I should just confirm we accept the recommendation. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, just for clarity. So item 8 is the housing strategy and updated action plan. And Councillor Fredericks, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. So we bring before you the housing strategy update, or as we like to call it, the refresh. The housing strategy was presented in 2021, just after I became portfolio holder for housing, and a lot has changed since then. I remember it coming, and we didn't have the issues of neutrality. We didn't have issues of rising interest rates and so on and so forth. So I'd just like to thank the officers for bringing this forward, and we are hoping that we can tick off a lot more of our action plan as we did last year and the previous years as well. I would say that I had offered this to Overview and Scrutiny before the working party was voted on. So what I would like to say is that any recommendations we will obviously consider to go into that strategy when that happens. So I'd like to open the floor, and the officers are present.
Brilliant. Is there anything any of you wants to add? Okay, Councillor Toy, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, thanks to officers for bringing this here and for working through a very difficult and complex subject. And it's pleasing to see it's being refreshed fairly regularly, because it is a changing thing. And it's, you know, the data at the beginning of the report about homelessness is stark data, and we may need to pause and think about some of that. However, I'm pleased to hear that Councillor Fredericks already said that this, you know, there's the opportunity from the Overview and Scrutiny information to be included. One little observation, which I'm sure is covered in the flexibility in the plan, but whether we should consider, as this goes through the consultation, what I would call cross-border interests. So we have quite a long, thin district that borders other areas. So where someone might be working in one or living in the other, where that, whilst we say things have to be within the district, that there may be, so whether if we make those decisions now whilst we're laying out this strategy, means we've got a clear plan of how we're going to deal with that, rather than perhaps individual cases. But that's, I've left up as a suggestion, that's all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. That's useful. Yeah, and certainly a consideration, of course, in terms of the service delivery. You know, there's quite a lot of flexibility there. Every case is individual. Councillor Vickers, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm grateful to Councillor Fredericks for saying that the ongoing cross-party working group on homelessness, that their recommendations will be taken into account and given very, very careful considerations. I'm grateful for that. Just on the strategy itself, I'm very much a local homes for local people person, and I just wondered how you arrived at the 2 years for Band 2 allocation. Because I mean, I would like to see, for local connection, sorry, I'm not making myself clear, for local connection, because I would like to see it at 3 years. I mean, I'm very keen that any homes that we have go to local people wherever possible. And I think from my recollection in our consultations with Cornwall, council, they have a 3-year link.
So I think you might be confusing this item with the next one. So if we just hold that point and come back to it under item 9, because valid question. And I appreciate we've got 2 housing items, not too dissimilar in a sense, because there's both a bit of overlap. But we'll come back to that. I'll bring you in the next item. Thank you. Councillor Cushing, go ahead.
Thank you. Something that you and I discussed, which is around, we did discuss actually having an update on nutrient neutrality, and I've written to Officer Fulcher on that, and I think he said he's going to talk to the Chief Executive, but I think that's something that would benefit all members to understand where we are at the moment, because I think it's been quite a while since we've had collectively an update on that. So I just wonder if we have any news when we might actually be able to undertake that.
Yeah, I appreciate others want to take that question. Do you want to go ahead?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I've got some information I can give to Councillor Cushing. We plan to have an update on nutrient neutrality, probably in the middle of next month. We obviously have to prepare our groundwork to deliver the most, as it were, up-to-date information on nutrient neutrality, and at the moment there are a series of procedures and meetings that need to take place before we can give a meaningful update on nutrient neutrality. So we are aiming to deliver a briefing for all members either in early or mid-May at the latest. That's the plan.
Yeah, thank you for that. Obviously, there's been cross-party requests for an updated position. Anxiety about this issue exists, of course, across the whole county and in other areas of the country. Of course, so I know some people remember the date that this sort of kicked off for us, and yeah, absolutely a big part of the challenge we now face. So thank you, very, very valuable intervention. Okay, was there anything further? So yeah, okay, so we happy to accept the recommendations that we progress to the that we agree the proposed new housing strategy actions set out in Appendix B of the report. Okay, that's proposed, seconded by Councillor Withington, and all of those in favour, please. Thank you. Item 9 is the housing allocations scheme for 2024. Councillor Fredericks.
So this is something that's going to happen to every council across the district, across the country. We're having to look at our housing lists, and we're having to prioritise those in extreme housing need. So this is a consultation that's going to go out to stakeholders, asking questions, getting their feedback on allocation and how they feel about that. At the moment, I think we've got something like 2,500 households on our housing list. But the reality is we simply won't have enough housing to accommodate all of those people. And we'll have something like 500 to 600 households on our urgent housing register. So we need to concentrate on those people. But the officers are present, and I'll be glad of any questions. Thank you.
Okay, just to check, do the officers have anything they wish to add at this stage? Okay, well, thank you, and thank you for your time coming today. Councillor Vickers, do you want to just repeat your question? I can't remember it, sorry.
Sorry, I think that you've got a 2-year, someone has to have a 2-year connection to be allocated to Band 2. I wondered how you'd arrived at that and whether we should think about, as making local homes for local people a priority and maybe extending that to 3 years. But I'm very happy to listen to the views of Cabinet and other members. Thank you. I'm happy to answer that. The main allocation scheme does have a 3-year criteria where everyone has to have lived in the district for at least 3 years continuously, or 3 out of the 5 years. The band 2 that you're talking to, that's a filter that if we've gone through all the 3-year requirement and we haven't got anyone that has got a connection to that particular parish or surrounding, we'll then consider a 2-year connection. That's to make sure that they're still going to people with a local connection. But first priority in the band 1 and to join the housing register in the first place is the 3 years. The band 2 is just to any difficulties that we might have in particular locations. Thank you very much for that clarification. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Thank you for the answer. That was very useful. Councillor Breen, go ahead.
Thank you very much. On a similar vein, actually, and like Councillor Vickers, I'm also a big fan of the sort of local lettings policy and local allocations. And for those of us who represent more rural wards, the vast majority of any new affordable homes built will come under this area. So the first thing to say is I welcome the simplifying of the of this. You were getting towards quite tenuous local connections at G on that. So I think that this is strong, and I think it's, you know, it's an improvement and it's robust in ensuring the local connection. What my question is that on 4.13 it says that it talks about the allocations being with the strongest local connection, and I just wondered whether that was okay. Somebody's local connection is 15 years and somebody else's is 5 years. Is the person who has got the 15 years connection got the strongest local connection and therefore would be prioritised, or would it be they're both categorised as band 1 and then it will be decided on need?
Yes, it will be decided on housing need and then local connection. But what I want to stress is that every case is different. So these will be coming to officers and a virtual panel to decide on that, and that includes all the other agencies, social services, etc. So even though we're doing this, we really have to be mindful that, as I say, every case is different. And if there is a housing need, to approach the council, and then we can actually give advice on other routes for housing as well.
Okay. Right, Councillor Whittington, go ahead.
I've got a question linked to shared ownership, because as I understand it, there's a housing need element to that as well. I wasn't quite sure, so if I could have some clarity on that, when who can apply and who will get allocated, because I'm sure we'll have several people apply.
I'll take that one. So we do ask applicants on the housing register if they have an interest in shared ownership, and we ask all of our partner RPs to advertise their shared ownership homes through Your Choice Your Home. That's particularly relevant for those local connections, for the exception schemes, because we have the added criteria of a cascade of local connection for shared ownership as well. When it comes to general needs shared ownership, I have to be honest and say quite a lot of the times the homes don't go to people on our housing register, principally because I think people see the housing register as a route to social rented housing. And those people who are perhaps in lesser need but with more means themselves don't necessarily automatically think about joining the housing register. So we do also allow partners to advertise through estate agents, through their own websites, etc. But all of the RP partners have an element of need linked to their shared ownership sales. So they will ascertain that a household cannot afford to buy on the open market full ownership. But equally, the other way around, they also check that somebody can afford to buy shared ownership and they're not going into shared ownership when really they can only afford to rent. So it's a little more nuanced than a yes/no answer, but yes, through both methods, both through advertising through our housing register and Your Choice Your Home, but also through their affordability and need tests, we ensure that shared ownership goes to those people who need it but can still afford it.
Yeah, okay, brilliant. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I just ask the officers, how the feedback, the consultation responses are going to be formatted and reported back to us? We had a system with conservation area appraisals, at the Planning Policy and Built Heritage Working Party, which actually scheduled all submissions from the public consultation and literally went one by one through them to say which were acceptable, and if they weren't, why they were not acceptable. Is that going to be the format, or are we going to have it in some sort of abridged report? It's just a point of clarification, Mr. Chairman.
I mean, I think so the first thing to say is some elements of the allocations policy that we're proposing are not really open to consultation because they're being amended in line with new legislation. So I think it would be rather unfair to ask the public to comment on things that they have no choice in, and indeed we have no choice in. What will be focusing the consultation on is the elements of discretion we have as a local council. So things like how many years of residency should it be for a local connection, those type of things. We're going to be asking a series of specific questions so we can provide tabulated answers to those. But I think we will also be providing a lot of the free text. At this stage, to be honest, we don't know what level of feedback we will get from the consultation. I imagine that those people on the housing register who have concern about their future priority will respond. We'll also be going to town and parish councils, local members, local aid, voluntary agencies, etc. To an extent, it will be up to members to how much detail they wish to see. We'll seek to summarise the results, but all of the information will be available if members wish to see it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Twine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to say I was pleased to hear that we're talking to town and parish councils, because a lot of our stuff goes on with exception sites, and we need to get the parishes understanding and joining in with this. So you know, we've approached them before. We need to make sure they keep knowledge of how much local need there is as well. I think that was useful information that went out to the parishes. So I'm pleased that we're doing that. So pleased to hear it. Thank you.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks. Councillor Fredericks, go ahead.
Yes, just to follow up on that point from Councillor Toy, just before Christmas, I commissioned a piece of work with our housing strategy team and our enabling officer, that every town and parish council have indeed what their local housing need is, how many people that are homeless in their areas. So it basically says homelessness is in all of your parishes and all of your towns. These are your residents. These are people that have grown up and worked here. For people to understand that, because I get enough of negative comments, as you can imagine, regarding other vulnerable people that are in this country and need housing. So yes, I just wanted to follow up that, and if anybody wants to see that information, then please contact their town and parish council. I'm sure they'll be happy to share that with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, we've obviously seen it, you know, context here, a lot of additional cost burden and personal impact in terms of temporary accommodation, both, you know, for us and the families involved. So it's desirable to reduce the usage of that and reduce the time in which people are staying in temporary accommodation. Lots of different areas of consideration, you know, within the allocation scheme, and I appreciate that's just one of them, but it's been very prevalent across the whole of the UK. I just wanted to perhaps close by highlighting the very good response to the survey on your choice, your home. So grateful to members of the public who've taken the opportunity to reply to that. That's always useful learning for us. So if we go to the recommendations, which are to support the proposed allocation scheme as summarised, and agree we undertake a statutory consultation, after which the report will be brought back to Cabinet for consideration ahead of formal adoption. Is that proposal made by councillor Fredericks, seconded by councillor Toy, and all of those in favour, please? Thank you. That's unanimous. Item 10 is the Rocket House. Sorry, the Cavill Park. Let's not go back to that one. Item 10 is Cavill Park, and that's the further update. Councillor Withington, thank you.
Not a lot to say on, oh, okay, feedback.
Thank you
again.
for your time.
And not a lot to say on this, as this is really full transparency, in that the last time this was discussed, it was asked that we come back with the assurance that this would be completed within the budget. And as you can see from the report, that is the case. And I think just to reiterate as well, it's an important step forward for youth football in Cromer. So that's all I want to add, and obviously unless there's more questions.
Yeah, sure. Well, maybe I can declare an interest this time because I do live on the road. So there we are. That's probably about the closest connection. I'm not a football player, I'm a football fan. But this is the most logical course of action of any we could be considering with the club in need of additional playing space, a clubhouse, and the site is underutilized following the demise of the Cromer Adult Football Club, Cromer Town Football Club. And of course, there's an allocated capital sum present following sale of the site, part of the site for the medical centre, the doctor's surgery. So pleased to see this should fit into that budget nicely. And were there any questions? We've obviously had some discussion about this at previous cabinet meeting. Go ahead.
Chair, is it correct that part of the money is actually in trust to us from a charity? Or is a covenant on that?
So that it's going into a bit of history here. I think what you might be alluding to is the trust that well, in fact, the land was gifted, I believe, to the community. We're talking 1927, so a long time ago, I think. Maybe even before that. I can't remember the year. I'm sorry. We did have a look at the covenant recently. The land is there is a covenant on the land that it's for sports uses. So you wouldn't say, without lifting that covenant, undertake other forms of development. So very interesting covenant. I think it depended on the death of King Olaf of Norway for the time to start ticking in terms of the demise of the previous arrangements. But that was a matter of lots of discussion locally previously. We have recommendations. Well, there's options considered here. Does Councillor Withington, do you want to make a proposal?
Yes.
Yeah, sure, brilliant. And that's to that we instruct cabinet, the cabinet instruct officers to deliver the project as outlined in the report, providing the necessary improvements and provision of additional facilities at Cavill Park to enable Cromer Youth Football Club to lease the ground and have a home for their football operations. So seconded by Councillor Varley, and all of those in favour, please. Thank you. That's brilliant. Item 12 is the Sheringham enabling land, and in the absence of Councillor Shires, I will deliver the report. So obviously we've had lots of prior discussion on this item, and it's a relatively simple point in time we find ourselves in terms of the extension that's been requested. But I first of all just wanted to see if if everyone else you wanted to say anything on the report, are you happy for me to continue?
Thank you. So sharing enabling land, it's surplus area of land next to the reef. March 2020, Cabinet agreed to sell the land for hotel development. The purchaser has obtained planning consent and has requested an extra 4-month period to satisfy the remaining conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it. So nice, simple recommendations which you can proceed with quickly. I suppose the other point to say is that this will be monitored to ensure that this occurs. Perhaps we'll have further discussions about that business planning. Most advantageous option before us among those considered, given the progress already made and the work that's been invested to progress to the point we have now. So I'm happy to propose the recommendations. Is that seconded, please? Councillor Toy? Yeah. Sorry, was there anything you wanted to say?
I was just wondering, given the comments earlier, sorry, we've got feedback again. Given the comments earlier, this is around a similar amount of money that we're dealing with, £1 million, and I'm a ward member and I live in that ward where this is taking place. Do I need to declare an interest? Oh, thank you.
So, thank you. That's useful. So, yeah, obviously we'll continue to monitor this item, but if we take a vote in favour of the recommendations, which was to grant the 4-month extension to the legal agreement to enable the purchaser sufficient time to satisfy the remaining officer condition, and obviously, as we stated, it will be monitored to progress the party to ensure that. We will monitor the progress to ensure the party satisfies that remaining offer condition, which will be delegated. And were that not to progress, we've obviously got other options for the site. So, should we take a vote of all those in vote, please? Thank you. That's unanimous. We have no reason to exclude the press and public, and we have no private business. So that is the close of the meeting. Just in time for some noisy background noise there. Thank you.